In 2021, in Georgia, United States, there was a 22-year-old man named Robert Long. Everyone in his neighborhood saw him as a kind, quiet, religious, and polite young man who kept to himself and loved helping people at church. But in a single day, this young man did what no one expected. Robert, in one day, killed 8 people and wounded 2 others in one of the most horrific massacres in Georgia's history. So, the big question here, what made this devout, kind young man commit such a terrible massacre? What is the real story behind it? Today's story is a little different, strange, and full of unbelievable contradictions. If you want to know the secret behind what happened, follow the story with me to the end. And as usual, don't forget to hit like if you enjoyed the video. Now, let's begin today's case. Our story begins on April 6th, 1999, when Robert Aaron Long was born in Woodstock, Georgia. His father was also named Robert, and his mother was named Diane. Robert grew up in a close-knit family on a farm in Woodstock. His upbringing at home was very good. The only different thing was that his family was extremely religious, the kind who go to church every day. His father was an important figure at church, and no religious event passed without him being there. At their church, there was a pastor named Jerry. He was close to Robert's father, and he often preached against adultery, homosexuality, and drinking, calling these things great sins before God. From a young age, Robert loved going to church, taking part in every activity and mission trip. It was at the time his favorite place. When he entered high school at Sequoia High, he was completely unknown. Even the top students, more than 400 in his class, told the Washington Post they knew most classmates, but none of them knew or had even seen Robert. What does that indicate? That Robert was very shy, lonely, and had no friends. There was, however, one incident that made people notice him at school. One day, a student said racist things to the school security guard. Robert did not stay silent. He stood up to that student, yelled at him, called him filthy and disrespectful, and said the guard did not deserve to be spoken to that way. This incident is important because we'll return to it later. The topic of racism will come up again in this story. During high school, Robert's focus was entirely on religion. He was a member of a religious club called First Things, which taught young people how to spread Christianity in public schools. But when he graduated, his life changed completely. He was on one path, then suddenly turned 180 degrees and went the opposite way. At first, he did odd jobs for neighbors, fixing small things around the area. Then enrolled at a university in northern Georgia, in the city of Cumming, about a 45-minute drive from his parents' home. Sadly, he did not complete his studies. He withdrew after 1 year. In 2018, he was formally baptized in his family's church, a big decision for him because he felt he had to return to the right path after feeling he had drifted away from religion. But things did not stay well for long. In 2019, he met a woman named Hannah from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and entered a relationship. From the day he started seeing her, he disappeared from home. His family lost track of him. They didn't know where he was or what he was doing. They grew worried and reported him missing to the police. He had disappeared after going to his girlfriend's place when he was 19. After a long period, Robert returned home. But strangely, from the day he came back, he was a completely different person. What happened during the time he was missing? We don't know exactly, but what is certain is that from the day he returned, Robert became obsessed with one thing. Robert became addicted to watching pornography and developed an overwhelming anxiety that this addiction was ruining his life in a very bad way. Not only that, he also began visiting shady massage parlors and spa centers, which was totally against
everything he was raised to believe and against his faith's teachings. The strange thing is that Robert would do those things, then return home filled with horrific guilt, hating himself, saying he'd strayed from God and that he was dirty. He lived in a violent inner conflict between what he had been raised to believe and the desires he could not control. A roommate named Tyler said Robert would tell him everything and was always saying, "I feel like I'm living in darkness. I feel I keep committing sin more and more." He blamed all his problems on the pornography addiction.
He tried everything to break free. He imposed strict limits on his internet use, deprived himself of his phone, deleted all his social media accounts, and used a computer with no internet access. But unfortunately, all these attempts failed, and he kept returning to the same hellish cycle. Tyler said that when Robert came back from those shady places, he would run to him and tell him, "Tony, I just came from that place and I did this and that. And even, I was also sexually assaulted there." Imagine how broken this young man's state had become. People who knew about his situation told him, just pay a particular woman instead of going to those places. But he would say those places felt safer. When people asked him, "Are you into Asian women? Is that why you go there?" he replied, "No, I don't love them or hate them. I just found myself there and I started." Robert was convinced that the only cure for his problem was spiritual and religious treatment, not psychological therapy. That led him to attend various recovery centers. He went to a recovery center called Maverick and stayed there 6 months. That center treated addicts by spiritual steps. But the problem was that while he was supposedly in treatment, he still kept going back and forth to the shady massage places, lying to himself, to his family, and to the people at church. Of course, that only made him feel more guilty. Then he went to another center called Hope Quest, which treated addiction with Christian principles, exactly what he wanted. But that center was in Woodstock, only 1 mile from a shady massage place, so he was still in the same circle of temptation. On March 15th, 2021, Robert returned home and had a huge argument with his father. In the end, the father evicted his son from the house. As soon as he was kicked out, he texted his family saying, "I will not come back. I'm starting a new life." But unfortunately, this new life was not what his family expected. They tried to contact him many times, but he did not answer. They reported him missing to the police again. On the morning of March 16th, 2021, Robert woke up convinced, absolutely convinced of one thing: he must clean his life of all surrounding temptations. That morning, he was sitting in his room watching porn when one of his roommates passed by and heard the film, so he came in. Robert blushed horribly, and his face turned red. He wished the ground would open and swallow him. That embarrassing moment, despite his claim that he'd clean his life that morning, pushed him to make a crazy decision. He decided to buy a gun and end his life because he hated himself, his life, and everything he was going through. Around 2 p.m., Robert went to a gun store in Holly Springs and legally purchased a 9mm pistol along with a box of 50 rounds. 50 rounds for someone who wants to commit suicide. That's a strange number, right? After buying the gun, he bought alcohol, started drinking, and then decided to go to a certain place. He headed to a place called Young Asian Massage. Surveillance cameras recorded his arrival and showed he sat in his car for about 1 hour before getting out. That was at 3:38 p.m. He entered and stayed inside for about 1 hour and 12 minutes. He had the massage, paid, then went to the restroom.
When he came out of the restroom, he put on his clothes and, without any warning, pulled out the gun and started shooting. The first victim was a man named Paul Andre, 54, who was standing by a table talking on the phone. Robert aimed at his head and shot him. Then he went to the reception area and found a woman named Daewoo Feng, who stuck her head out of room 3 when she heard the first shot. He shot her in the head. She was 44. He went to room 4 and found a woman named Shaoji Town, 49. He shot her in the head. He went to room 2 and found a male client getting a massage. He shot him and wounded him. He went to room 6 and found a client named Delana, 33. He shot her in the torso and she died. Her husband was next to her, but they did not harm him. After that massacre, he left the place. At least 6 people were recorded alive at that point, and the time was 4:54. One of the wounded victims later said Robert was shooting randomly, so he tried to save himself by throwing himself to the ground and begging, "Please don't kill me. I have a family and kids." Robert told him, "Raise your head." When he raised his head, Robert shot him in the face. The man survived miraculously.
The first report reached police at 4:54. When they entered, they saw blood everywhere and horrific chaos. They found 2 dead bodies and 3 critically wounded. 2 of them later died at the hospital. That made 4 dead and 1 surviving wounded. Around 5:47 p.m., Atlanta police responded to a report of a burglary at a spa called Gold Spa and found 3 women murdered: Sun Chan, Sung Yakim, and Haeyeon Jung. While police were investigating that scene, they received another call about a shooting at another spa called Aromatherapy Spa. There, they found 1 woman dead, Young Oya. According to a Korean newspaper report, an employee from Gold Spa managed to flee and said the shooter was shouting, "I'll kill all the Asians." But this information is not confirmed. Another witness said that when the shooter arrived at Aromatherapy Spa, he knocked on the door, and when it opened, he opened fire straight away and then fled, which explains why only 1 person was killed there. Perhaps the weapon jammed or the bullets ran out. Police noticed the strong similarities between the incidents, deployed patrols to all massage places in the area, and called in the FBI. After the surveillance videos were released, Robert's own family saw their son in them and called the police to say it was him. They also told police that Robert's car had a tracker, so the police were able to locate him and arrest him after a chase. On March 17th, Robert was charged with the murder of 8 people, and the district attorney said he would seek the death penalty. Robert pleaded guilty in Cherokee County and was sentenced to life without parole. But in Fulton County, he pleaded not guilty. When asked why he did it, he said that at first he wanted to kill himself, but then he thought that instead of ending it alone, he would help people first. Help them how? By purging them of the sin they were committing at these places, and then he would kill himself. This case caused a huge outrage in the United States. Asian Americans marched and demanded their rights, calling it a hate crime. President Joe Biden ordered flags at federal buildings to be flown at half-mast for 4 days out of respect for the victims. And to this day, the Fulton County trial is still ongoing, with the district attorney pushing for the death penalty. In the end, I'd love to know your opinion on this story. Does Robert deserve the death penalty, or is life imprisonment enough? What do you think about the motives that led him to do this? See you next time in a new episode. Peace out.